Hello, everyone. My name is Lydia Kenrith. I am a senior at the University of Missouri, and I am an intern with the Missouri Rural Health Association. Today, I'll be presenting my webinar on the mental health of students in rural schools. I have grown an interest in public health and health education recently. I don't know exactly what I'll be doing once I graduate, but it might be in rural health. So let's get started. Okay, so here is kind of an overview of what I'll be talking about. So I'll do a little introduction and then I will then talk about mental disorders, the more common mental disorders in children. And then I will be talking about barriers and obstacles and then prevention and detection. All right. So there's an obvious gap in the mental health services that students in rural schools have compared to students in urban schools. It's the geography and lack of awareness and limited availability of these services, which I will get into when I talk about barriers and obstacles. So the problem that rural students are facing is kind of what I was talking about. But rural communities in general, they're perceived as having little to no mental health issues, which isn't true. People think since there's not a lot of people in these communities that they don't really have problems, but that's not true. So because of this, these communities lack the education and services and resources for students with mental illnesses. These communities are often faced with various barriers and obstacles that don't allow them to get the help for these students. So before I get into that, I wanted to pose this question. So it's about how many US children aged 2 to 8 years have a mental, behavioral, and or a developmental disorder reported by a parent. So what do you guys think?
Sorry, do you want us to chat it or talk about it?
You can either put it in the chat or just say what you think.
Okay. I guess I'll just say it. I'm going to guess letter B, 1 in 7.
Yes, that is correct. So it's so weird that 1 in 7 children, age 2 to 8, have some sort of disorder. I think that's just crazy to me. So, on the topic of mental disorders, let's talk about the most common ones. So we'll be discussing anxiety, depression, OCD, and PTSD. And I just noticed that I have a typo there, but oh well. Okay, so let's first talk about anxiety. So, according to the CDC, when a child does not outgrow the fears and worries that are typical in young children, or when they have so many fears and worries that interfere with their everyday life in school or home or their play activities, they may be diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. So there's actually many different kinds of anxiety disorders. They are separation anxiety, phobias, social anxiety, general anxiety, and panic disorder. So I have a few examples of each. So an example of separation anxiety would be like the child would be afraid to be away from their parent. An example of a phobia is, an extreme fear of maybe like spiders or the dark or something like that. And then social anxiety, they would be afraid of going to school or other places that there's like a lot of people. General anxiety, an example of that would be being very worried about the future or about bad things happening to them. And then an example of panic disorder, they would have repeated episodes of sudden, unexpected, intense fear that include symptoms of like their heart pounding, having trouble breathing, feeling dizzy or shaky or sweaty. And that kind of goes into the symptoms overall of anxiety is fear or worry. They might be angry, might have trouble sleeping, might have a headache or stomach ache. So now we will be moving on into depression. So depression is an overall definition is occasionally being sad or feeling hopeless. But this might be in like depression is more of an intense feeling of being sad. It's not an occasional thing. It's like an everyday thing. So some examples would be feeling sad or hopeless or irritable. They may not want to do things that they like to do every day. Um, they might have changes in eating patterns, either eating a lot more or a lot less than usual. They might also have changes in their sleep patterns. They might have changes in their energy, like they might feel sluggish or restless. They might also have a hard time paying attention, maybe in school, and then feeling worthless, useless, or guilty. And in intense cases, they might show self injury or self destructive behavior. So, some children may not want to talk about these feelings of helplessness or hopelessness. Um, but it's good because it might lead to suicide, which I have on my next slide. I have included some warning signs that are good to talk about with a parent or like a guardian or maybe a teacher at school. So if they're talking or thinking about death, threats or comments about killing themselves, behavior that they're aggressive or impulsive, mood swings, and then social withdrawal. And then I have included the National Suicide Prevention Hotline on the screen as well. So now we'll be moving into OCD, which is obsessive compulsive disorder. Excuse me. So many children occasionally have thoughts that bother them, and they might feel like they have to do something about those thoughts, even if their actions don't actually make sense. So, for example, they might worry about having bad luck if they don't wear a favorite piece of clothing, for example. For some children, the thoughts and the urges to perform certain actions persist, even if they try to ignore these thoughts and try and make them go away. So, this would be classified as obsessive compulsive disorder when they have unwanted thoughts and the behaviors they feel they must do because of those thoughts. These thoughts happen frequently. They take they take up a lot of time. They interfere with different activities that they do, or these thoughts make them very upset. So these thoughts that are taking over their mind these would be called obsessions, and then the behaviors they enact are called compulsions. So some symptoms would be, having the unwanted thoughts or images or impulses that occur over and over again. And these thoughts can cause anxiety or distress. Another symptom is having to think about or say something over and over, such as counting or repeating words over and over. Having to do something over and over, like hand washing or placing things in a specific order. And then my last symptom that I have listed is having to do something over and over according to certain rules that they, put in their mind that they have to follow in an exact way so that the compulsion can or the obsession can go away. Um, a common myth of OCD means that someone is like neat or orderly. I'm sure you guys have heard that someone say, "Oh, I'm so OCD, I need to clean my room." Sometimes OCD behaviors may involve cleaning, but many times someone with OCD is too focused on the thing that must be done over and over rather than being organized. So my last common disorder that I'll talk about is PTSD. All children may experience very stressful events that affect how they think and feel. Most of the time, the children they can recover quickly. However, though, sometimes children who experience severe stress, such as from an injury, from the death or threatened death of a close family member or friend, or from violence, this can affect them long term. The child could experience this trauma directly, or they could witness it happening to someone else. When children develop long term symptoms, which is usually longer than a month, from such stress, this can turn into PTSD. So, some symptoms include reliving the event over and over in just their thoughts or in while they're playing. They could have nightmares or sleeping problems. Um, Sometimes someone could maybe like trigger those thoughts of the stress. Um, Children with PTSD may have a lack of positive emotions or an intense fear or sadness. They may be irritable or angry. They might have outbursts. They might seem fidgety, restless. They might have trouble paying attention and staying organized in school. Um, Sometimes the symptoms of PTSD can cause ADHD as well. Or no, they sometimes these symptoms could be confused with ADHD. Sorry. And then some examples of events that could cause PTSD would include physical, sexual, or emotional maltreatment, being a victim or witness to violence or crime, and then um, some also would include like natural or maybe man-made disasters, severe car accidents, or a serious death or illness by a from a close family member.